Now, dear listener, you know I've talked to you a lot on the Politicrat Daily podcast about making your own podcast. And let me tell you something, Anchor gives you the best opportunity to do that. It's free of charge. Yes, it's free. And there are lots of creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your own phone or computer. How about that? And you can even add songs to your podcast from Spotify. It's really wonderful. You can do this, and it really is very easy. And Anchor will even distribute your podcast for you. It can be heard on all kinds of platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can make some money too. And money making is a good thing. It's everything you need in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Welcome to the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore. It is Sunday, June the 6th, 2021. On this edition of the Politicrat, the police and how policing is done in the United States. Well, you already know how it's done. A look at part of the Sunday morning broadcast, plus information about COVID-19 coming up next.
It's not the way Southgate would have wanted to have gone into a major championship. And there's some jeering again, as there was here against Austria in midweek. Some supporters clapping, some jeering. England players said to be confused and disappointed at the jeering of taking a knee. Gareth Southgate says it makes them more than ever determined to continue to do so. They will in the European Championship to help highlight racial injustice. Southgate saying that some supporters don't appear to be getting the message.
And it's not just that they don't appear to be getting the message. I think they get the message loud and clear. That was the sound from this morning or this afternoon or this evening, wherever you are in the world, just prior to the friendly match between England and Romania, the international friendly match before the Euros 2020, because it's called that because it was supposed to be on last year and it was obviously postponed because of the pandemic. So it's still called the Euro 2020, which is going to be, that competition is going to take place beginning next week. And that was the scene before the friendly match today, where the players, most of the players, all the players from England and almost all of the players from Romania took a knee before the game started. And you heard it. You heard the reaction from that crowd being the crowd in Middlesbrough, England, at the Riverside Stadium in the northeast of England. You had about 7,000 plus fans in the building there, and you heard the boos. The vast majority of those fans are England fans, and they are booing. And these fans, as I have said on social media, these are racist fans. These fans are racist. And I know people are going to go, well, it's not that they're racist, they just don't know. Listen, stop talking with excuses. And even the England manager, Gareth Southgate, as you heard there from the commentator saying, well, they don't seem to get the message. They get the message. They're racists. I know Gareth Southgate can't say that and won't say it. Well, he can say it, but he won't say it. He should say it, but he won't. And, you know, you've got those same fans. Those fans got the message very clear when God Save the Queen was being played in the national anthem, as it was just moments before they took the knee. Those fans weren't booing. Those England fans were not booing. And here I am sitting here now doing this, and I'm wearing in my England flag. my England scarf. And this is a friendly match, so this means nothing, but it's a tune-up for next week's Euros competition. And there was nobody booing during God Save the Queen when that national anthem was being sung there at the Riverside Stadium in Middlesbrough, England. There, of the 7,000 or so fans that were in the building, there was nobody booing that national anthem. So why are people booing people silently taking a knee for a message being sent that racism is not going to be tolerated by us, and racial abuse and racist abuse and police murdering black people is not going to be tolerated. And we're saying stamp it out. And this racist abuse of English footballers who are black, this has got to end. And that's what this is about. And the injustice has got to end. And so you got people in that crowd in England booing. I'm telling you, these people are racists. And it is about time that people are issued some kind of caution for booing. They have a right to react the way they want to. I mean, you can't really ban them from a match because they boo. Free speech. However, there should be some kind of caution or something that can be done. This is the same. I mean, this is racism in action. These are racists in action. And to me, booing those footballers taking a knee to say enough is enough with racism and end racism is no different from heckling and racist abuse of a black footballer. To me, there's very little difference. I mean, there's obvious difference in that the heckling and the racist abuse is obviously directed and targeted at black players. So, yeah, I mean, that's a little bit over exaggerated, me saying there's no difference. Of course, there is a difference. What I really mean to say is that booing players who take a knee in support of stamping out racism belongs in the same ballpark as someone who is sending racist abuse online or in person or in the football stadium to a black player. I don't see where that is not at least in the same ballpark. Not the same thing, but it's in the same ballpark. And the fact that England, the men's national team and their Twitter account @England, had to actually send out a tweet today, basically begging England fans not to boo, begging the racist fans, those white fans, begging them not to boo. It's kind of sad, isn't it? That you've actually got to send out a tweet to tell these white racist fans not to boo, begging them, please stifle your booing, don't boo. Here's what the actual tweet said, so that you understand that this is what they did prior to this game, prior to the start of this game today. Ahead of today's game, our players will once again take the knee as a show of solidarity with the black community, including members of our squad who themselves continue to suffer abuse on a regular basis. Please support them, just as we know you will once the game begins. Well, here was the answer, once again, from England fans, just prior to the game. This is their support of black footballers.
There's some jeering again, as there was here against Austria in midweek. Some supporters clapping, some jeering. England players said to be confused and disappointed at the jeering of taking a knee Gareth Southgate says it makes them more than ever determined to continue to do so. They will in the European Championship to help highlight racial injustice.
Welcome back. This morning, CBS Sunday Morning did an hour and a half in a special program on policing in America. And what they also did is look at some police departments in other countries and look at the way those countries policed the citizenry of their countries. And of course, not surprisingly, there were marked contrasts between those countries and here in the United States of America. I don't think that that would surprise too many people at all. But I think that while some parts of the reporting were quite good and useful and edifying, and I'm going to play you some clips from the Sunday morning program on CBS. Here in the US, every Sunday, there is Sunday morning, a program on CBS has been running for something like 50 years now, if not longer. And they do have feature stories every Sunday. And this whole episode on this particular Sunday was devoted entirely to policing in America and a look at policing in other countries. And as I said, I'm going to be playing a few clips from the hour and a half. I do, again, find that there were some things about the hour and a half that were useful. But one of the things, or one of the biggest elephants in the room that never really got talked about, and I missed only 5 minutes of it. Now, I doubt that it took place then. I really did. I would not expect it to. But there was nothing about police unions. That was the one thing in an hour and a half on the topic of policing in America. And there's nothing about police unions? I found that to be bizarre. How can you do an hour and a half? And again, I missed the first 5 minutes. But I doubt that it was in the first 5 minutes of that broadcast. Because when I came on to the broadcast and watched it, there were police talking about policing. And you wouldn't start a report out with the police union. At least, I don't think you would. I doubt that that was talked about. But in the remaining, let's put it this way, in the hour and 25 minutes that I saw of the hour and 30-minute report, nothing on police unions. And I'll tell you why I don't think that even happened in the first 5 minutes, is because later in the program, there was a profile of Bill Bratton, who had policed as a police commissioner. And he did so in Boston. He did so in New York twice. He did in Los Angeles as well. And just bizarre to me. I just do not understand why they did a profile on Bill Bratton, who was a big stop and frisk fan, which resulted in the stopping and frisking of 95% of black and brown people. And almost all of them did nothing wrong, had no infraction, they found nothing on them. It's just police just looking to arrest people for nothing, just looking to arrest us for nothing. That's not how crime prevention works. That's not how crime solving goes, just going around looking to arrest people. If you see something happening, or if you get a phone call that's credible, and you see that it's credible, because when you get to the scene, there's stuff going on, then you do something about that, and you police. You don't shoot people dead, and you don't go around stopping and searching people just because. And nothing mentioned in the portion on Bill Bratton about stop and frisk and how that worked under him and Raymond Kelly and under Mike Bloomberg. Nothing. Oh, no. Giuliani. Oh, no. We're not going to talk about that. That's just... I don't think he was there for Giuliani. I think that was Ray Kelly. Not Ray Kelly. That was Bernie Kerrick. What a mess. And it's just ridiculous. Anyway. So I've got some complaints. Yes, that surprise. I've got some complaints about that Sunday morning program. Because while there were a few, as I say, some things that were good. I mean, there's a report that I'm going to play you part of. I'll play you all of it. The San Francisco part, of course I will, of what they're doing with policing here in the city of San Francisco. That was a good report. There was a report about a police officer who is a U.S. Army veteran and a pastor in Iowa, in Mobile, Iowa. That was a good report. I'll play you a portion of that. But to do an hour and a half on policing in America and not talk about police unions and not deal with stop and frisk, it's just absurd. It's absurd. And not deal with the systemic structure and make it, oh, it's just individual police. Oh, and if only we had the resources. I just think that a lot of this is so dishonest and not dealing with the real systemic issues, and instead going on about, well, it's just individuals and we're one video away from all hell breaking loose. No, we're one killer cop away from all hell breaking loose. It ain't the video that's the issue. See, that's the problem. There's this passive way that people here in the United States, some of them, look at these issues. Oh, we're one video away from all. It's not the video that's the issue. It's the killer cop. It's the system that protects that killer cop. It's the police unions that are the issue. But of course, no, we're not going to talk about police unions and all the power they have, and how they lean on these governors in these states and lean on these mayors in these cities and have a tremendous amount of power. We're not going to talk about them, you see. I find that to be tremendously dishonest. When I come back, one of the good things about the Sunday morning report was what I'm going to play for you right after this.
Losing a child in a fatal police encounter, Mona Hardin's pain is still very real and very raw. She shares her thoughts with us this morning. I'm sorry. I'm scared. I'm your brother. These were some of my son's last words before he was killed. On May 10th, 2019, my son Ronald Green was tortured to death by Louisiana state troopers in Monroe, Louisiana. My son Ronnie was tasered, punched, and choked by white officers. They shackled Ronnie's wrists and ankles, pepper sprayed him while laying face down, and left him moaning for more than 9 minutes as they washed and wiped his blood from their hands and faces while he struggled to breathe, bleeding from their beating. Then the officers bragged to each other about what they did. When medical assistants finally got there, Ronnie was limp and unresponsive. He was loaded into the ambulance, cuffed to the bed rail, without any administration of oxygen or aid. After my son was killed by these cops, the call came. The Louisiana State Police lied to me and told me that he died in a car crash. They hid the body camera footage from the public for more than 2 years. I saw my son Ronnie murdered at the hands of those troopers. There's no way you can look at the body camera videos and not see that. I wish I could tell you that these officers have been convicted of crimes they did that night, but they have not. I wish I could tell you that justice has been served for my Ronnie, but it has not. No one has been held accountable for my child's death. We need these officers arrested for what they did that night. We need them to be indicted for this inhumane and unbelievable act of violence. If there's no accountability, deaths like Ronnie's will just continue. How many black men, women, and children will be killed by the police before we make a real change? How many black men, women, and children do we have to watch get slaughtered by white cops on camera? Ronnie was a father, a brother, an uncle, a friend to many. He was loved and taken too soon. Our family will never, ever be the same. I will never give up this fight for his justice.
That was Mona Hardin, and I thought that was really an important thing about this report today, at least, that we heard from someone who lost a loved one, lost her own son. She lost her son to police violence, to murder. I mean, but the problem that I have, again, it's this lack of focus on the system itself. And the interesting thing to me about this Sunday report this morning, on Sunday morning, on CBS, was that they would pick out reports and that would pick out parts of the system, such as response teams, such as the approach to policing, such as the way police are supposed to do their jobs. And yet they just wouldn't, it's just incredible, they just wouldn't join the dots together. And that's deliberate, of course. That's not by accident. You pick this part of the system, you pick this part, but you don't bring it all together and say, well, we have to examine the whole system to begin with. And what also was just insidious about this report, this whole thing, is that they didn't talk about the origins of police. How are you going to talk about policing in America and not talk about where the police came from, how they started? And then later on, in the very report you're doing, you do this thing with an officer, and I'll play this as well coming up, with an officer who is a pastor and a police officer and someone who served in the U.S. military. And he's talking about, well, we need to know why. We need to know why. I want to know why the person that I've arrested ended up here. What did that person do to get to this point? What was going on in their lives to get to this point? Not just about this arrest. And so you focus that into the story of one police officer. And you'll be hearing from him later. His name is Edgar Rodriguez. And you focus on him talking about it and what he does, but somehow you don't focus on the whole system. That's exactly what the system should be looking at. That's what we should be forcing the system to do. Actually, we need to get rid of the system because this system isn't working for black people. It's not working for brown people. It's working very well for the authors of that system, but it's not working for the rest of us. And so it's just interesting how, and again, I don't think this is by accident. I come to the view, and I have for many years now, that everything's connected. More or less everything is connected. And there aren't coincidences. Well, I mean, there are. But when there are things happening in the world, it ain't by accident. It isn't by accident. And so when it comes to the example I just gave of a police officer who is looked at and he says, well, when I like to try to find out how these people got inside the back of, in the back of my police cruiser. What choices did they make? Why did this happen? And policing at large is not like that in the United States. It's all about, we've got to snuff out this threat. Now, we think that this person's a threat, meaning this person, meaning black person, meaning brown person. Oh, they're a threat. We've got to... That's what they do here. They murder people. That is how they police here. They don't look at anything else. But to have a conversation about policing in 90 minutes, an hour and a half, and not talk about police unions, not talk about the history of the police and the origins of the police. And if they did that in the first 5 minutes, then I take all of this back. Because again, I did miss the first 5 minutes. If you watched Sunday morning on June the 6th, 2021, a Sunday, and you saw the first 5 minutes, you tell me if they had anything about police unions that went into any meaningful depth and anything about the history of police and how they originated in the United States out of enslavement patrols. That's how police originated in this country, out of enslavement patrols, patrolling, and I wouldn't even call it patrolling. It was hunting down, if you will, for lack of a better terminology, black people who escaped from bondage, or black people who had run away, black people who, escaped from bondage, running away, getting away from this. And when those police, those so-called, and they weren't even called police then, they were white mobs of violent men, white men, who would be running around trying to find these black folk that had the temerity to want their freedom that bit more. Well, everybody wanted their freedom in that situation. But the people who were risking their lives and ran away and escaped, what would happen is those people would often be killed, would be castrated, would be maimed, lost a limb. They do the most violent things to the people that they would recapture. And you see, you've got to analyze all that before you just go into, here's how policing is in America. And you don't put any frame on it. There's no context. There's no build-up. There's no historic background, nothing. And that's how it is. We just get dropped into the situation. And so then when they show you these videos of black people being killed, you're looking at this now as something without any context on it. But when you've got the history, what context do you need when you see someone being gunned down? I get that. That's not what I'm getting at. What my frame is that you need to put all of these events as a system that has lasted and gone on for more than 400 years. That's what my point is. And how that system is still in place. So you can have all the reports you want about good things happening in San Francisco, good things happening when it comes, and that's not always true either of San Francisco, because Lord, we know about Mario Woods. Has anybody forgotten? Has everybody forgotten about Mario Woods gunned down in San Francisco by San Francisco police? I hope people haven't forgotten that. But again, you've got to look at this whole structure. And to examine policing in the United States means you've got to examine the structure in which and out of which that policing emanates and operates. That is how it has to be looked at. And not only just looking at it from that point, you've got to look at, what is it that we need to do? And it means taking a look at the system itself. How can you be looking only at, the way we respond is not... You've got to look at the system that allows these cops to continue to other jobs. And that's another thing the report didn't cover. These cops that go to other jobs. And that's just ridiculous. How can you have a 90-minute conversation and not talk about those things? That's all systemic. It's all systemic. And I just think that you've got to, if you really want to examine this, examine it seriously. You have to. And nothing about qualified immunity. No one's talking about, that wasn't on that program today. Nothing about qualified immunity. You've got the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act that still hasn't been passed. You've got the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act that still hasn't been passed. Both of those have not been passed in the Senate. The House passed both of them. And you've got to look at systems. And then they went to Japan and how the Japanese police are so friendly and nice. I don't know how friendly they are when it comes to black people over there in Japan, when it comes to the Japanese police, because the racism in Japan against black people is just, and I don't care what people tell me. I'm telling you what I've been told. I'm simply saying that, when you do the report on Japan and the police are so nice and they're this and they're that and, they do this and they do the other and they're not, they train with helping people who are involved in criminal activity. And I mean, come on now. I mean, this is what is happening, is that there are other people in other parts of the world who are looking at policing in a different way. And we are the only country in the world where we look at shooting to kill people, not looking at ways to prevent that. We're looking at shooting to kill people all the time, specifically shooting to kill black people and brown people. And I think that's just a really dishonest thing. The dishonest thing is when you've got, everyone knows, I mean, everybody knows that the problem with policing in the United States is the over-militarization, is the qualified immunity, is the black people being murdered by police and the police not being held to account. There's only one that's been convicted in recent years, and we don't know in the next 10 days whether or not he's going to get the maximum sentence or whether he's going to walk out. We honestly don't know that about Derek Chauvin, which is why we've got to get involved now, which is why we've got to be writing. And I will, at some point, maybe tomorrow actually, will present the address and present the phone number information in terms of finding who to contact, because you've got to put relentless pressure on the forces in Minneapolis to make sure that, and to the judge and to the courthouse, to make sure that this guy, Chauvin, killer cop, is, and I know he's no longer a cop, but the point is to make sure that this guy gets the max. This has got to happen. You can't call yourself a civilized society and you're having police murder black people. And then on top of that, not getting any jail time, not getting indicted, not getting the handcuffs put on them. So, my whole thing is with the Sunday morning show this morning, some of it was good, but there was a lot of it that was, I just think, really disingenuous. Did not get to the heart of the matter. And I'm not surprised. And that's why I really don't watch a lot of these programs anymore. I don't watch these programs anymore for that reason. They deliberately do not tackle the kinds of aspects of an issue that they should be tackling. They deliberately don't do it. Somehow we can't think to do that. And then they pepper it in with both sidesisms. The both sidesisms. You can't just report on the stuff that's going. You've got to both sides it. Supply sides, both sides it. I mean, that's what they're doing. Because we have to be objective. And when these people are so-called objective, they're using some toxic language. I mean, recently, by the way, on a San Francisco news channel, local news, Joe Biden, as you know, President Biden, saw last weekend a jobs growth number of 559,000 jobs. Over, I believe it was a quarter, I forget, over a month or over, I forget what it was. It's one of the highest quarters ever in many, many months. And so Biden was taking the victory lap on that, quite rightly, and Democrats should. And then you got this broadcast that had these people on it. And these no-name pundits, they're Republican pundits, or they're, left of, right of center. And they're, this isn't good enough. This job growth isn't good enough. People are staying at home. And they're collecting unemployment. And they're making more money at home than they are in their work. And that's just so disingenuous and bullcrap. Because if there are people who are staying at home, I guarantee you those people who do that probably have been let go of a job, and that job is not paying them much of anything at all. And B, the people who are at home are having a hard time finding work in their particular sector. It turns out that most of these 559,000 jobs are in the hospitality sector, which means that hotels are opening up again. which means that people are traveling again slowly but surely during this pandemic. And I hope people are vaccinated, and I hope people are wearing masks. And that's what that means, is that a lot of that hospitality industry, service industry, is about the hotels, is about the restaurants, is about the people cleaning things. And that's what that is. But these jobs are not in jobs that pay lots and lots of money. These are jobs that are minimum wage or even below minimum wage jobs. And there is the American Rescue Plan. There is the American Jobs Plan. There is the American Families Plan. And those are being rolled out and looked at and talked about. And there are negotiations going on. And Joe Manchin is just an absolute terror. This guy is, and listen to me, this guy is a Republican. And I don't want to hear, well, he's in a district that's Republican. I don't want to hear, well, he's in a state that's Republican. I don't want to hear that. It's about what kind of politician you are. What kind of person are you? Are you willing to make the calls? Are you going to serve your constituents, or are you going to serve only the voters? And there is a difference between constituents and voters. Because if you're afraid of some voters, then you're going to do whatever you're going to do. But if you care about the constituents, whether they voted for you or they didn't vote for you, or they didn't vote for anyone, then that's really what it's all about. You're not there to serve just voters, or just voters who didn't vote for you at all. You're there to serve everybody. And you have to serve, thereby, the greater good of the state and the country. And why are you, Joe Manchin, not going to vote for all these? Oh, I'm not going to vote for this. I'm not going to vote for the jobs bill. I'm not going to vote for that bill, for voting, for this, for that. Then what the fuck are you there for? Other than to prop up a Republican agenda. What are you there for, Joe? Manchin, that is. Not Biden. I just really am flabbergasted, but not shocked. Shocked, but not surprised. Oh, I'm not going to vote for an overhaul of the election law. Oh, I'm not going to do this. Oh, I'm not going to do that. What the fuck are you going to do, Joe Manchin? It's just pathetic. And for me, I've had an absolute enough of this. I just think it's just ridiculous. I think that at some point now, you are going to have politicians who work for you and not keep looking over their shoulder at the next election. And that's the problem. And for the last 40 years, that's been the way it's been. Everyone's looking, election day, I've got to look around and dial for dollars, and I've got to look around. I mean, that's the focus. And really, you should be able to be fearless enough as a politician to stand on your feet or sit on your backside or whatever you do. Whatever position you're in or condition you're in, to stand up or sit down or whatever and face your constituents and govern and lead and make the right vote instead of the cowardly things that you're not going to do. Oh, I'm not going to vote for an overhaul of the U.S. election laws. I'm not going to vote for the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. I'm not going to vote for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. I'm not going to vote for, my God. It's just pathetic. Something's got to be done about that. Something has got to be done about these people like Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. And here's one thing you can do about it. There are at least 6 Senate races in the United States Senate that are going to be happening in 2022. One of them is in Ohio, as Rob Portman is going to step down from that seat. Tim Ryan is running for the seat, the Democrat. One of them is in Florida. Val Demings is expected to run against Marco Rubio there for that Senate seat. One of them is in Wisconsin. Ron Johnson is expected to step down, and there's going to be a Senate race there. One of them is in Alabama, and it's very likely, I hope, that Doug Jones gets involved. I hope he does. I hope Doug Jones does get involved. I hope he does. Then you've got Georgia. Reverend Warnock is up again because that was a special election to fill out the time of the departing Johnny Isakson. And that term is going to come to an end in January of next year. And then he's got the special election basically this year, Warnock has the special election this year. And his term is up in January. So that's the thing that's a key, is that's got to be the thing. So that's Georgia. Then you've got North Carolina, Richard Burr stepping down, not running again. There's at least 6 of these races that if the Democrats win, if you go out and vote for Democrats in the respective states, whichever state you're in, you vote obviously in that state, and that state alone, obviously. But Democrats can absolutely, if they get out and get voting, they can absolutely eliminate the need for us to present primaries of Sinema and Manchin, because both of them need to be primaried. But I think what is more effective than that is to make sure that we've got a bigger and larger majority in the United States Senate. And once that happens, then any of the jackassery by Manchin and Sinema becomes fairly immaterial. But we've got to make sure we get those 5 or 6 or 7 Democratic senators in, so that we have a healthier majority, so that these 2 idiots, these 2 jackasses, when they sit there braying like sheep, or whatever, I don't know, sheep's baa, I don't know if they bray or not, I don't even know. Oh dear. But the point is that we need to get more Democrats in the Senate so that we don't have these moderates. And we need to start electing progressive Democrats too, because they are not going to buckle like this. I know some people criticize the squad, but then what I mean is the squad are not going, and they're not in the Senate, they're in the House. But you're not going to have progressive Democrats saying, well, I'm not going to vote for an overhaul of the U.S. election law. Manchin is a moderate, and Sinema used to be, and this is the thing about her, Sinema used to be a Green Party member. And quite frankly, Sinema is a tool of Trump, and so is Manchin. We need to make sure that people like this aren't going incognito into the Democratic Party, because that seems to be the Republican new strategy. Have these Democrats in there who are right-leaning. Oh, I'm more concerned about, it's clearly they're more concerned about the vote than they are about doing the right thing. And be bold. Manchin has to be bold as a politician and stop being a coward. Be willing to risk your political life. Be willing to. But these folks, see, the thing is, these folks aren't Adam Clayton Powell III. They're not. And if you know anything about Adam Clayton Powell III, he didn't give a fuck about what was going on. He helped the people. He cared about the people. He wasn't looking at, the next election's coming up. He just did the work of the people. And that's what gets me so ticked off, is that these politicians now in 2021 and beyond, I've got to look. If I sneeze too hard, I might lose 10 votes. I'm like, give me a break. Do the work of the people. So here is the segment about San Francisco that was on today's Sunday morning program on CBS here in the United States. I want you to listen to this. This is about the way that San Francisco now is approaching policing, particularly in situations of mental health. San Francisco has become the first city to do this. Actually, maybe not. Maybe there are other cities who are doing it. I've heard of this in other cities, actually, but San Francisco is one of the leaders in this, making this something that we really should be doing everywhere around the United States. Everywhere. It should be like this report. Listen to this.
Thousands of homeless people can be found on the streets of San Francisco and many other American cities, some of them grappling with mental health issues. John Blackstone looks at a pilot program aimed at helping both the homeless and the police.
San Francisco's roughest neighborhoods can seem dominated by the homeless, the mentally disturbed, and those openly using drugs.
Don't you need more police on the street to change that?
But San Francisco's Mayor, London Breed, is cutting the police budget.
We got to look at things differently. The challenges that people face are not what they used to be, and a police response doesn't solve all of these issues.
So now in San Francisco, many calls to 911 no longer bring armed police officers.
How you doing today?
Instead, dispatchers send what the city calls a street crisis response team, trained to deal with mental health issues. Stephanie Cheery, a behavioral therapist, is on one of those teams.
When someone is experiencing a mental health crisis, especially psychosis, it can look scary to somebody to see a person who's talking to themselves or yelling into the sky.
It's scary, you call the police.
And now you can call and ask for us, too.
In 2019, San Francisco police answered more than 50,000 calls related to mental health.
In our city, and I think throughout the nation, a lot of extra jobs and tasks have just been given to law enforcement because there's nobody else.
Fire Captain Simon Pang is in charge of the crisis response teams, whose members come from the city's health and fire departments. They do not carry guns.
People living in the streets often have a history of complex traumas, and law enforcement, somebody with a gun, can be very triggering and potentially escalating for someone like that.
So far this year, nationwide, more than 50 people with mental illness have been shot and killed by police. One study concluded that almost 25% of fatal police encounters involved mental illness.
Having a mental health crisis is not a crime, and it's not necessarily a public safety issue. So having our team here to be able to respond to those non-violent mental health calls is critical to free up the police to address what are actually public safety concerns.
As well as a mental health expert like Cheery, each crisis response team will have paramedics like Richard Platt and Leslie Fong, and one member like Michael Marchicelli. He's called a peer counselor because, well, he's been there, done that.
You know, when somebody says, do you have a license or your degree? I think the streets and drug addicts have been my degree.
There'll be limits to what we can do when it comes to our personal interactions. Michael doesn't have some of that. He is able to use his gut in a way that we usually can't.
You look pretty good.
Thank you.
Right now.
Thank you.
It wasn't always quite like this recently?
No, actually, it was the opposite.
Earlier this year, Jermaine Reeves was living on the streets of San Francisco's Tenderloin district. In desperation, he sought help from one of the street crisis teams. They found him a place to live.
It was a godsend, and it was right on time. And, it was the first people who actually listened to me.
He says he would never go to the police for help.
Like, if a police shows up right now, you guys wouldn't think anything of it. My heart would start beating fast. I would wonder, like, what are they over here for? I would start looking around to see if it's some other black people. Like, it's just not a good situation that ends for people that look like me.
With police reform now an issue across the country, several cities are developing programs like the one in San Francisco. Mayor London Breed.
So what this program is doing is taking away some calls that used to go to the police, taking some duties away from the police. Is this defunding the police?
Well, I don't like to label it. The issue here is we have to think about policing differently than we ever have before, especially in light of what we see the data shows us. The goal is to meet people where they are, to develop rapport, to have a conversation, to treat them like human beings no matter what they're going through, and to make sure that you build trust within seconds. And that can make all the difference.
To treat them like human beings and gain trust, and that can make all the difference. That was San Francisco Mayor London Breed at the end of that report there from the Sunday morning show on CBS today. And it's true. Treat people like the human beings they are. View them as human beings, because that's what they are, human beings. And so this program in San Francisco, which deploys mental health counselors, people who've been on the street who are now working alongside counselors, and firefighters and people who help people rather than just go around trying to end people, is an important thing so that you can have a level of trust. And you are not coming into a community viewing the people there as the enemy. And this is what's going on all over the country. We've got people who are in uniform as police who see black and brown people. Oh, they're the enemy. They're not going into the neighborhoods with a outlook that says, okay, I'm here to help you. It's an outlook that says, I'm here to kill you. And that's horrible. That's barbaric. That is evil. We should not be having killing squads in this country, but we do, and they're the police. I've talked about the system being a well-oiled killing machine, and here it is. It's playing out right before your very eyes and ears. I think there's nobody on this planet that can sit here and pretend now. It's all in front of you. The question is, what are we all going to do about this? One thing we have to do at the very least, at the minimum, is to raise our voices. And also to hold politicians and these officials who are elected to these positions in police departments or sheriff's offices accountable. And we've got to keep fighting for the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act on the federal level. The end to qualified immunity, the end to chokeholds, the end to no-knock warrants. I mean, this is what we have to start doing. We've got to get out here and do this. And we've got to demand that the politicians that are running for office, whether it's state, local, federal, municipal, in your city, we have to demand that they support the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, or that they are in favor of measures that protect communities and measures that prevent police from coming in as occupied forces with tactical and military gear on. It's not a freaking war you're fighting. You're supposed to be protecting and serving. You're supposed to be protecting and serving. And one thing we've also got to do is make sure that these budgets, whether they're federal, particularly, and state, don't have all this money for militarized gear for police. That's overkill. We don't need that. You don't need to have police walking around like RoboCop in your neighborhood. That's ridiculous. These police are dressed like Humvees. They're dressed like monster trucks. They're dressed like Decepticons and Autobots. Why is that? We don't need that. And that's the thing. All of these administrations, Republican and Democratic, in the White House have been given all this money. And it's the Congress that's really doing that with the budgets, giving all this money to police. That is money that for military gear and weaponry, and what is this? Ooh, look at my Tech 9. Look at this. You don't need that on the streets. And you're relying less and less on dealing with human beings and more on weaponry. There's, the idea of the police on the street, the beat cop, that's almost gone in large parts of this country. It's almost non-existent, with some obvious exceptions in some cities and towns. Usually in the sleepiest towns is where you see these cops on the beat. They're nice and friendly. But in the cities, oh no, you hardly ever see police just walking around anymore. They're all in their cruisers, and they're all there when there's some protest. You can find them in their militarized gear and their freaking tanks, walking, driving down the streets of Ferguson, Missouri, or driving down the streets of whichever city in the U.S. But my goodness me, where's the beat cop? And where's that police officer who treats you with respect? Where is that officer? Where are those cops that stand up against the police who do what Derek Chauvin did? Now, yeah, I know some of them testified against Derek Chauvin at his trial, but let's be honest. This is after the world came out and protested. This is after the world came out and said, we need justice for George Floyd. So, while it is rare for police to come out and testify against other police, and yes, he had been fired from the force, by the way, as well, Derek Chauvin. I'm not going to go too overboard on it because, come on, literally the whole world came out and protested in all the continents, basically, of the planet came out and protested against police violence and police murders of black folk and brown folks. So come on now. But even the Sunday morning program didn't say anything about, well, what about police who speak up against this? I mean, they did have a segment at the beginning where, I didn't see the first 5 minutes, but that first segment, they did have police talking about police and dealing with that, and some people this, and there's a black cop who was talking about some black people looking at him sideways and calling him names. And look, I'm not in favor of calling black cops names. They have jobs. They have jobs to do. Now, I don't like the fact that some of these black cops also do these killings. I am vehemently against them too. And the problem is that they see blue, and they try to make themselves invisible as black folk. And so they don't see the black people they police as the same as them. And so what they do is they do a different kind of discrimination. And therefore, I've got this uniform on, I've got protection, I don't see you as the same as me. So then that's a way I can detach myself from you, and then I can put a bullet in your ass. That's the way I think these people think, some of them. And so this is the problem that also needs to be addressed, and it wasn't. You can't tackle every single thing in 90 minutes, but you can at least be honest enough to put in the things that do matter in addition to what you did put in, like that report I just played you. You can put in things about the police union, about qualified immunity and how deadly that is, and these police unions with so much power. You can be putting in the other instrumentalities of the system. Educate your viewer. Tell your viewer where the police evolved from in the United States, where they came from. You could be doing those kinds of things instead of these little things that you're doing here and there, and not advocating what the other models of policing should be. And I think the other models should be the ones that are taking place in these countries where people aren't being killed. I mean, you shouldn't have to be in this country or any country calling the police and bracing for impact. That is not a police department. That's a killing machine. You should not be bracing for friggin' impact if you're a black person or a brown person in the United States. But the fact is, that's what we do. If a police officer is called because there may be some domestic disturbance or there may be some issue with mental health, we have to brace ourselves for hoping that we don't end up dead or that someone in the family doesn't end up dead. That is not policing. That is murder. That is a well-oiled systemic killing machine. And I must say that I was really fortunate. I called the police for the first time in my life a few months ago. And I've told this story before in this podcast. And 7 of them showed up because I heard some things going bump in the night around here. And it was, I thought someone was trying to break in. And there had been a rash of break-ins in the neighborhood. So, yeah. And I don't carry firearms. So, I don't think anybody should be carrying firearms. And now we've got an assault rifle ban overturned here in California. Jeez. But the point I'm trying to make here is that you don't think I was worried that one of these cops wouldn't have jacked me and murdered me? Thankfully, it was all a bunch of smiley-faced cops, 2 of whom were white, and I guess the rest were Black and Latino. And they all looked so innocent. And don't forget, you can have a lot of innocent-looking, baby-faced cops who pull out their guns and murder you, too, I was really fortunate. They were all kind, and this is in the middle of the night, all kind and gentle, and then they kind of laughed with me when we found out that it was a friggin' family of raccoons that were up there, making noise and hollering and carrying on, and bam, boom, boom, and these were big-ass raccoons. And I was there basically these cops were basically making fun of me, that I would be calling them. Because, and how did I know what it was? And I saw this big-ass shadow come across come on, how did I know what the heck it was? And I'm calling it, get me 911. There seems to be someone. Yeah, it's funny now, but it was not funny at the time. But you see, that's what policing's got to be now. And again, I say abolish the killer cops. Get rid of them. And, abolish this way of policing. Yes, abolish this way of policing. That's what I think should happen. Abolish the police. And there are people who say, but I've said that too. I'm going to be even more specific. Abolish this way of policing. It ain't working for black folk because we're being murdered out here. Brown folk, we're being murdered out here. It's not working for us. And you're supposed to protect and serve us. Our taxpayer dollars are going to you to do your freaking job, to pay your freaking salary. It's coming from us. So we're paying you to kill us? I don't think so. We've got to end that way of policing. That's what I mean when I say abolish the police. Here's part of the story that Sunday Morning did on Edgar Rodriguez. He is not only a police officer and someone who served in the military, he's also a pastor in a town called Moville, Moville, in Iowa. And it's about a 30-minute drive away from, I guess, Sioux City or from wherever it is. I forget where. It's not far from Sioux. It's a distance from Sioux City, but it's a drive. So he's got to drive out to this town where he's called to. And every time he's called, he has to drive at least half an hour to get to where people are because it's deserted and there's lots of plains and plains of corn. And, that's the Midwest. That's Iowa. The rural area, it's pastoral and rural and, so you've got to drive a little ways to get to people. And so I think you might appreciate this is a portion of this.
He got the chief's job about 1.5 years ago, and he's been determined to change the image of law enforcement, starting with what he wears.
For a small town, I just feel it's a little too tactical. too military. I think we need to be a little softer.
Really? What message does that send, do you think?
Well, it says that we're approachable. Hi, how are you today?
When he went to visit 78-year-old Bonnie Holtz, he was there to help catch the bad guys that robbed her of $1,400.
So the best thing that we can do, the best way to protect ourselves is to know what to do.
But he was also there to offer an ear, a shoulder, and maybe a prayer.
I love you, Bonnie. The Lord, give her strength. Give her strength and courage, Father God. Amen. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'm just around the corner, so call me anytime. Okay?
It's not all hugs and kisses. He's arrested plenty, hauled them off to jail. But it's about a 30-minute drive to get there. And he uses that time to try to understand who he's arrested.
I want to know what they're going through, and that's how usually my conversations start. What made them get to the point where now they're in handcuffs and they're in the back of my car and they're going to jail.
It's not what they did, but why they
did it. Right. What got him there?
That's how I met Pastor Edgar.
Is by being arrested?
Yes. I didn't even know he was a pastor till he told me.
Once Agnes Bohoboy found out that he was a pastor, she opened up. His squad car became more of a rolling confessional. You could have just made that drive in silence.
I could have.
Still done your job.
Yes, I could have. I don't think I would have felt very good about myself if I had just done that, knowing that I had an opportunity to help somebody, to encourage somebody. It doesn't take much. What we're going to learn today that David did is just learn to wait.
Agnes now rarely misses one of his Sunday sermons. So have you been arrested since?
Nope. I changed my life right there.
Well, you have a wonderful day, okay?
Have a blessed day.
So we'll see you soon.
To be fair, small-town policing does have a kind of built-in intimacy. But for Edgar Rodriguez, it is that intimacy that makes the twin callings of pastor and police officer too personal to ignore. Are there any lost causes for you?
No, there can't be. You see, that's something I can't think that way. I don't necessarily believe that there's a limit. That once you failed 10 times, then we should just forget about you. You're always going to fail. I think we should just keep on trying because that's what God did.
A message he hopes is shinier than his badge.
All right, buddy. Can I get a hug? With all this gear? All right, man. I'm very proud of you, okay? Keep working hard. Bye. Bye.
A woman in Napa has died from COVID even though she was fully vaccinated. Health officials say she was over 65. She did have underlying health conditions. The woman lived at a care facility. She was infected by an unvaccinated employee. That employee later tested positive for the British variant of COVID.
It's not out of the realm of the possibility that we could see more of these cases in the future. And this is why it is really important to have more people vaccinated against COVID-19 in order to prevent these variants from taking hold and causing outbreaks in an unvaccinated population.
The CDC says more than 100 million people in the U.S. are fully vaccinated, and roughly 110,000 of them went on to get sick in what are referred to as breakthrough infections. More than 60% of people in Napa, meantime, Napa County, are fully vaccinated.
That was a report on Friday from Kron Television, the local news at Kron. And that was here in San Francisco, California. Friday night news. Now, this is really another reminder that, yeah, it's very rare, but there are cases where people who are fully vaccinated are still coming down with coronavirus. And as you heard in that particular case, they are dying. And you heard how this happened. Some person who worked in a care home was not vaccinated and had come down with the British variant, which is a highly infectious variant of COVID-19. So my point is that people need to wear masks, whether they are vaccinated or not. I think it's very important that people wear masks. And obviously this person, I guess, did not wear a mask. I don't know. It does not say in that report there that you just heard. And it doesn't say whether or not the woman who was fully vaccinated was wearing a mask either. But what it did say was, oh, she had underlying health conditions. Oh, well, she was 65. You know, I really don't like the way the news gets reported when it's reported like that. Because it seems as if you're subliminally or subconsciously planting in the listener or viewer's mind that, oh, well, she was old. 65 is not old, by the way. She was old. But I'm just saying this is the impression that's being painted by the report and the person reading it. This is what I think is happening. And this is happening, I think, in some people's minds who watch this or listen to it too. Oh, she was old. 65. Oh, underlying health conditions. Well, you know, they're probably going to die anyway. And then you wash your hands of it and move on. That's really the way I feel that report comes across. She was 65 and she had underlying health conditions. So what? Why is that necessary to mention that she had underlying? We all have underlying health conditions. We all have pre-existing if you're born ever in the world, you have a pre-existing health condition. You have a pre-existing condition somewhere. You get allergies, you get sick, you get the flu, you get the cold, it's all pre-existing conditions that you've had in your life. Somewhere, right? There is not a person on the planet who has not come down with some kind of health issue. Whether it's a cough, a cold, a sneeze, something far more serious than that. She had underlying health conditions. Oh, come on. It's not even worth reporting on that. Oh, and she's 65. Well, I mentioned a 53-year-old just a few moments ago. I guess for the frame of reference, they're putting out the age of the person as 65. But the point is, even if she was not 65, if she was 85, 95, 105, 25, 35, 45, 55, it doesn't matter how old the person is. The fact is that this virus, COVID-19, is deadly. And these vaccines are very good at stopping you from getting sick and dying from this virus. However, there are those rare cases. And of course, the news media is going to latch on to the rarities, to the 0.00000001s, to the 0.00001s that happen and make that the big story. Now, I'm not saying it shouldn't have been reported on. I think it should have been, because I've read this to you before about a player on the NBA basketball team, the Golden State Warriors, who had been fully vaccinated and had still come down with COVID-19. Now, he's still alive, by contrast, and he's a good deal younger than 65. But the point is that these rare cases do happen, and I just don't like the way that was reported. Oh, she's 65 and has underlying health conditions, as if that was her fault, as if that was the problem. Well, you know, it wasn't really the COVID. It was, well, come on, you can understand it. She has underlying health conditions and she's 65. Well, she got vaccinated. She got fully vaccinated. I think the question really has to be, why is it that there are fully vaccinated people who still get this virus? That's my question. And I think that should have been the focus of that report, or there should have been an adjacent piece to that report. And let's do some digging. Let's do some scientific research. I'm sure there is some being done. I've said this the other day. There's still a lot of people who are scientists around the world who are trying to find a cure for COVID-19. They're trying. And the vaccines are the temporary stop in the meantime. And guess what, folks? We're going to need another vaccine shot, probably in another year or so. It's like a flu shot. This is going to be, in my view, unless there's a cure. And we still don't have a cure for flu. We don't have a cure for HIV. Yesterday was the 41st year mark of AIDS? Or was it 40-year mark? 40-year mark, 1981, of AIDS, June 5th, 1981. And I think AIDS, by the way, HIV/AIDS has been around for a lot longer than 40 years. Come on. There have been cases of HIV/AIDS in the 1950s here in the United States. And I dare say in other countries. So the notion that we were commemorating 40 years of this AIDS pandemic that is still killing lots of people, particularly black women, and lots of other people that we really, we just don't talk about. That, this virus, this HIV, AIDS, there were cases of AIDS apparently that have been reported in 1957, in 1954. So this notion that, again, I'm not trying to spit all over. Oh, gosh. I'm not trying to trample anything here. I know it sounds like I am. And maybe I am trampling it. I am simply saying that I think HIV, based on what I've heard I've seen these reports from credible news sources, not wackadoodle sources, that show that there have been reports of HIV/AIDS in the United States in the 1950s. And so, look, there's been no cure for that. And we're still trying to find a cure for AIDS. We're still trying to find a cure for HIV. We're still trying to find a cure, HIV/AIDS. We're trying to find a cure for all of these viruses. But in the meantime, where COVID-19 is concerned, is that we've got this moment where there's scientists all over this planet trying to find a cure. And this vaccine is the temporary measure. And we're probably, again, I think we're going to be needing these shots year round, every year, once a year, until we can find a cure. And if we don't, we'll have to, just like we do with the flu, every year have a flu shot, every year have a COVID shot. But the person who was tested and found to have that British variant, who passed it on, apparently, to this woman who died, despite being vaccinated, well, the British variant is more virulent. And these vaccines are typically very good against those variants. And all these variants. But not in this case. And that's why people need to be vaccinated. Like that care worker, an employee at this nursing home, at this care home where this woman was staying. Nursing home, where she died. That employee had not been vaccinated. How about that? So that's the reason, basically, that she died. And this is why I say, please get vaccinated. Please, for the love of God, man, get vaccinated and wear a mask. Thank you. Thank you very much for listening to this edition of the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore.